Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Deck Tech on Constructed Criticism. I am Spencer. This is our YouTube channel. Don't forget that you can support these kind of videos by going to patreon.com/ccmtg. I'll do a Deck Tech today on a deck that a couple of people have asked me about, and that's my Jund list. So, Jund is a deck in Standard right now that people are playing some amount of success. A lot of those players have switched over to Grixis control. Both the decks were Goblin Dark Dweller decks. Unless you follow some of the bigger Jund players, a lot of them didn't like Goblin Dark Dwellers in the deck. Some of them like Tireless Tracker a lot, and I liked a few other things. So I want to talk about my deck list, kind of how I see Jund, what I feel like its role in the format is, and kind of what its good and bad matchups are. So let's start with the deck list. We have 3 Kalitas, 2 Nissa the Vastwood Seer, 4 Sylvan Advocate, 2 Tireless Tracker, 3 Fiery Impulse, 2 Kolaghan's Command, 2 To the Slaughter, 4 Ultimate Price, 26 lands, with the most important ones really being 4 Evolving Wilds, 4 Hissing Quagmire, and Llanowar Wastes. We have 3 Chandra the Flamecaller, 2 Painful Truths, 3 Radiant Flames, 2 Ruinous Path, and 2 Transgress the Mind. So, a few things on this deck and the deck list and what we're doing with it, or what I'm doing with it. This is actually fully me. The rest of the team didn't really have any say in it other than kind of bouncing ideas off of them. One thing that we discussed as a team was like, how do we beat things like Ormondal in the main deck? And it turned out that actually To the Slaughter was a really good answer to it. And it was 2 weeks ago during the GP when I saw multiple Ormondals blind to Blighted Fens. And so what I realized is if you can keep the board, clear enough, it's pretty easy to, or it's even easy to be at a high enough life total to take a hit from Ormondal, clear the rest of their board, and then To the Slaughter. Then it also kills Gideons right when they activate, or Nissas right when they activate if you're on the play. Card has been putting in a lot of work. But that's kind of how I came up with the list. Is a few things. Was I tried 2 Dark Dwellers one week, 1 Dark Dweller the next week, and I ended up on 0. And I don't really regret it. The reason I don't regret it is because I think the best card in the deck is actually Nissa Vastwood Seer, and if you could play more of them, you would, but unfortunately you can't. But man, this is the deck that I always wanted to play with Nissa. I played Nissa in Rug mid-range last year, all year. I played it at the Pro Tour with Green-Red Devotion. I played a lot of Nissa Vastwood Seer, but this deck is where she really shines because you get to use her as a card advantage engine, a creature engine, and her flip side is just really good in this deck. And this deck gets to abuse her because it plays so many lands, and it wants to hit its land drop. It's a mid-range deck that wants to get up on lands so that it can start activating its trackers more, so it can leave up removal spells for Kalitas, all those things. And so Nissa fits really well into that shell. And I started with 1 and more Tireless Trackers and Goblin Dark Dwellers, and I actually started with 0, actually. I started with 3. The very first list had 3 Goblin Dark Dwellers. And I was like, I'd rather have a Nissa in this slot. And then I was like, I'd rather have more Tireless Trackers. And then it was like, I'd rather have Nissa than more Tireless Trackers. And so that's kind of how this card came to be a 2 of, which you would think is like, Spencer, it's 2 of, it's not a big deal, but it's like, you really like this card. It's really, really good. So one thing that we had in the deck was Roast. We actually had a 2-2 split between Ultimate Price and Roast. I cut one of the 2 Roasts for the other 2 Ultimate Price, and the reason that I did that is because Avacyn's a huge problem for you. And Reality Smasher, while it's a problem, you still have other answers for it, like To the Slaughter, and actually To the Slaughter's really good against it. I actually did To the Slaughter one a few times, and Ruinous Path and things like that. And so I just needed to be able to kill as many Avacyns as possible. So for that reason, we went with Ultimate Price, and we're up on those. Overall, the deck, really good. I unfortunately went 0-3 against Green-White at the last BBDQ. I don't think that's atypical. I think that I built my deck wrong, and I had a huge lapse in judgment and just forgot to board in Clipwings. So I was just losing to these Avacyns and things like that. And that shouldn't happen. You should have Clipwings post-board against that deck. But yeah, the other interesting things here, other than obviously the fact that there's no Goblin Dark Dwellers, is just the amount of the cards that are selected are really important. Because we're not playing Goblin Dark Dwellers, we get to play 2 full Read the Bones rather than 1 or 2 or just all Read the Bones and things like that. And Painful Truths was really good. That extra card when you want to hit your land drops and like you don't need card filtering, and this just let you go off and just like draw through cards right when you needed to, get your gas in, things like that. And the other thing that I really like is the last cut for Goblin Dark Dwellers was actually the 3rd Chandra, and I didn't draw a lot of Chandras in the last tournament, but in the playing with Chandra, this card does this. This is another deck that's like totally okay discarding cards to Chandra, and that's when I think Chandra's at her best. Is when you like, I'm gonna play her and 0 her, and your opponent's like, oh really? Like and especially if like you're ahead and you this deck, you're okay taking time to win, and that's what I love about Chandra is like you're not trying to close out the game. You're trying to kill. Like I have 0'd her, -2 to her, -1 to her, and then started plussing her. Like this card's real good in this deck, and overall I really liked this shell. Let's go into the sideboard and kind of talk about it. We have 2 Den Protectors, the 4th Kalitas, 1 Virulent Plague, 2 Clipped Wings, 2 Rending Volley, 1 Ob Nixilis. I call that card Obsidian a lot. 2 Duress, 1 Infinite Obliteration, 1 Radiant Flames for the 4th one, and 2 Transgress the Mind. So, the thing that I will say about the sideboard is I have Virulent Plague in there, and I think that it's good against the tokens deck. But I think that it needs. I don't know if like the Ruinous Command is too good against this card. But I found myself waiting for them to be casting their Dromoka's commands, and that was a problem. But I still wouldn't cut it from the sideboard. The deck have a very good record against Grixis control and other controlling decks. You get to grind them out pretty good. And Chandra's obviously house. And the thing is you have to have enough cards to board out in all those matchups. So you have 2 Den Protector. You actually have to board in the Kalitas against control decks because you need the full cards with the Ob Nixilis, the Transgresses, and the Duress. And then against a lot of the control decks, you can board in Rending Volley. You want them to have manlands that they want to win with. That's important. But other than that, like you board in Rending Volley against a lot of those decks. Against the Esper Dragons deck, sometimes you board in Infinite Obliteration. I don't recommend it, but it kind of depends on like how their deck is built and things like that. But Clipped Wings obviously comes in against that deck, so that increases your ins for that deck. So boarding control can get hard because you have to like, how are they winning the game, and what cards are okay to keep in. For example, you can keep in to the Slaughter against the control deck because it always makes them sacrifice a Planeswalker. You don't have to have Delirium for it. So that one's pretty good against like the Esper control deck and things like that. Overall, I really enjoyed the deck and playing it. I bought the deck. I will continue playing it and looking for times where I think it's appropriate to play. I'll be looking into things like Grixis too, just like everybody else seems to be doing well with that deck, so I'll be looking at that. But this is how I would build Junt. This is after quite a bit of testing, and if you have any questions about the list and things like that, I'd be happy to answer them. But overall, really fun deck that you get to play sweet things. Let's just be honest, everybody in the world wants to play with Tireless Tracker. Everybody likes drawing cards, and this thing is sweet. So thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to check out the podcast at constructedcriticism.com and our Patreon page at patreon.com/ccmtg if you want to see more awesome content like this. Thanks everybody.